I'm Dave Cawley, investigative journalist and host of the podcast Cold. Don't miss Cold's new Season 3, where I look into the unsolved disappearance of Cherie Warren, a woman last seen leaving her job at a Salt Lake City office in 1985. Police cast suspicion on Cherie's estranged husband and boyfriend, but never made any arrests or recovered Cherie's remains. Find Cold Season 3, The Search for Cherie, anywhere you get your podcasts.
In today's episode of Project Recovery, we've got to find things that recharge our battery.
Right.
And whether it's a hike or it's going to the gym or diving into a good book, I think we need to remind ourselves what's truly important. Make sure you listen to the end. Find us on Facebook at Project Recovery. We'll have that and much more coming up. Welcome to Project Recovery Podcast, a podcast about addiction, more importantly, about recovery. It's brought to you by our friends at useonlysdirected.org. They got a three-part solution for the opioid epidemic. It is speak out, opt out, and, of course, throw out. I'm Casey Scott. That's Dr. Matt. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Casey?
Hey, normally I'd say something nice about our guest and give them a little tease of what we're going to talk about on this week's episode.
Right.
But as you see to the right of me...
Wait, there's no one.
2020 struck again.
Yeah, I know. We did have a guest,
yeah,
right?
And I was pretty excited about it. And I talked to her on Tuesday, said, hey, is there anything you need to clear up before you come in? What's going on? Give her the instructions of where to park. Promise that we'll validate her as being a good human being and her parking.
Just like, well done, good job.
Yeah.
Is that what you mean?
And then she sent a text back and said the family's down with the flu and could she come another time?
Yeah.
And I said, you betcha. Just make sure everybody's safe. And then when you're ready to come and share your story, we can. So she texted me this morning and said, sorry that I couldn't make it. Can you get another date? And so I sent her a couple other dates, and so we're going to get her on there. But then she shared this little tidbit of information with me. She goes, I'm kind of nervous if I'm being honest. I did one podcast, and I had a vulnerability hangover for the next week. And I know that's happened on a couple of our guests because some of the stuff that they talk about, some of the stuff they say is the first time that they've said it out loud, and it might be the first time that someone's listening has heard that,
Oh, right, yeah.
from family members.
That happens quite a bit.
And I know it's part of their story, but as we've said on this podcast multiple times, addiction is a family disease.
It is,
and,
for sure.
When we've had Sherry Smith.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we had her on. That was her side of the story. Right. Now I'm going to let you in on some insight. Well, you know already, but this is for the people listening at home. Her husband wants to come on and tell his side of the story.
I know, isn't that?
And I think that's
interesting. That's going to be interesting.
And when you sent me the text, I was like, this could be either really good or this could be really bad.
Yeah.
Because there's two sides of every coin, and there's two sides to every story. My dad would tell you there's three sides to the story. There's yours, there's mine, and the truth.
That's wise.
That's
wise.
Because everybody does, they. And I remember sitting in recovery in a process group, and this guy was telling his story, and someone goes, "Is that the honest truth?" And he said, "That's as honest as I can be right now." And in my mind, I go, well, wait a minute. No, honesty is yes or no. There's no
black
gray.
Or white.
There's no gray area. And in my addiction, I lived in the gray area. I mean, everything was gray in my life.
To keep that addiction going, it kind of has to be, right?
But the therapist said, no, that's fair. Yeah. Because sometimes we can only be honest as we're comfortable with or that we're okay sharing with.
Well, especially if you've spent years and years not being honest with yourself about something like your addiction and all the ramifications and collateral damage it's caused, it makes sense that you can't just flip a switch and go to complete honesty. That might be too overwhelming for a person. So it might be a process of little by little so that you can absorb and process, especially the damage you've caused to your friends and family by your addiction. And just to yourself. So yeah, it makes sense that I like what that guy said. He said that's as honest as I can be right now. Kind of acknowledging that he's not, he knows that obviously he's not being completely honest, but that maybe there's some growth he's planning on. That sounds sort of hopeful to me. Like that's as honest as I can be right now. And maybe he's thinking, but if I keep doing this work, I can be more honest in the future.
I remember my addiction, there were so many conversations that I was having with myself, with the mirror, with my head, trying to process information. And, sometimes I didn't know if that was the truth or that's a lie I told myself. My dad's mom was this great lady, Grandma Woolsey.
Woolsey, are we related almost?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
But she was cool. But she got to the point at the end of her life that she had told herself these stories so many times that, we'd get in the car after and I was like, Dad, did that happen? He goes, no, that's not what happened at all. But she has told herself this story so many times, but that it became truth to her.
To her, yeah.
And so in addiction, I think that happens quite a bit.
For sure.
And then all of a sudden you get sobriety under your belt and you look back with clearer eyes and a clean head and you go, oh. that wasn't
Not how that went down at all.
No. Yeah. Matter of fact, I was the jerk.
Yeah. Wait a second. I'm the bad guy?
I didn't see that one coming.
Yeah.
But
surprise ending.
Yeah, but here I am. And so, to get back to our guest, I was talking to her on the phone today, and we are going to have her come in. I think she's going to be a wonderful guest. Uh-huh. She just celebrated a big milestone with a 1-year sobriety.
Cool.
And I said, and I say this to all our guests, I go, this is your story.
Right.
Share as much as you are comfortable with. And when telling your story, it's okay to say, I'm not comfortable with answering that question. We've had that before.
We have, yeah.
And we're not jerks. We're not Jerry Springer. We're not digging for the dirt. We don't want to make you cry. And we don't want to cause a relapse or force you into an uncomfortable position.
Oh, for sure. First of all, I think it's important for the listeners to know we do our best to make sure that the guests that come on the show are emotionally ready to do it. And that's been a little tricky at times because we've had guests who are just very new to sobriety or raw with an issue. The fellow who came in and had his son had passed away recently, and so we do try to screen that to make sure that people are really ready to come on. But you're right, we always talk to them about this is their story. They can share as much as they want. And you've been kind enough to even say afterwards, if you're upset by anything that was said, we can take it out of the show.
Yeah. And so, and that's what we offer. We want to give you an honest insight into what goes into Project Recovery. And I think there's a lot of people out there. I did tell our guest that's going to be coming in, her name's Angelique, tell her in a couple of weeks. I said, the one thing that I have found is the similarities in other people's stories make me feel better about my own story and my recovery. So sometimes, some of the situations or some of the things that preempted or led up to it are very insightful for others who are battling addiction or loved ones or family members. We've had that quite a bit with family members where they came in and said, hey, we thought we were alone. And then we went to an AA meeting or an Al-Anon meeting and found, a community. And that's the opposite of addiction.
Right, that connection. And I think it just proves the point that we always talk about that, it's a family disease. And I was so impressed with our guest last time. I was thinking about it, talking with Ashley about that episode, that their kids, the two oldest boys, didn't, they weren't ready to go in for treatment, so the parents went to a 12-step meeting. And I was like, wow, especially two people that at that time in their life were pretty naive to drugs and alcohol and substance abuse and what it was all about. But they jumped right in and took the first step, which set a good example for their boys, And I thought that was neat and a really good. I hope some parents might be out there thinking, oh, I guess we could do that. Our kid isn't ready to go to treatment. Maybe we should go.
You just said something, and I don't know how I feel about it because my whole life, in my professional life, starting with radio to TV, not to podcasting, I've always shared everything that's going on with me for the most part with everybody. Mm-hmm. And that was just kind of the deal that I made. It's like, hey, look, you hang with me. I'm going to be as honest as I can with you, and I'm going to take you along for the ride, the good, the bad, the ugly. Mm-hmm. And I used to have, and I still do have quite a bit of pride in that. But when you were talking,
I think it endeared a lot of people to you right away as listeners and viewers of your shows.
But I never asked my kids if they wanted to go along on this ride. And that just really popped into my head.
Oh,
I mean, I think my two youngest are cool because they don't know any different. you know, and they're very happy. I mean, my oldest is happy what I'm doing now, but she got to go along for the ride.
The bumpy parts.
You know, and the fact that I talk about my life, I talk about my girlfriend, I talk about my ex-wife, I talk about my family and everything that's into it. And I didn't even ask her. You know,
you've never thought of that before? I mean, this is a real realization you're having right now.
No, because prior to this podcast, it was all fun and it was all perks and it was, you know what I mean? It was just like, hey, this is what Dad does and this is cool. And, you know, it was the eternal Christmas letter, you know, this is what's going on. Everything's good. And
fun Casey.
Yeah. And when it got ugly, Casey, I know she took it really hard. And
how do you think she feels about you being open and honest about it now, talking about everything that's happened?
I know she's proud, and I know she loves me, and I know she knows that I'm strong and what I'm doing is right, and I'm fighting a good fight. But I think it's probably a little much for her at times.
Yeah. Does she get feedback from other people, like the people that listen to this podcast or know you in other ways?
Her friends' dads or moms
might listen to
might listen and ask about it and stuff like that. And sometimes I think, you know, she'd rather not talk about me when she's over at her boyfriend's house.
She has a boyfriend?
Yeah.
Ooh.
I don't know how I feel about it, man.
I can tell you how I would feel about it.
So she asked him to a dance.
Oh.
And we were trying to figure out a way to ask him to the dance.
Yeah.
Because that's a thing.
It's a big thing.
You gotta be cute.
There's a production.
Yeah. And so she comes to me. She goes, hey, Dad, we got to ask this kid to the dance. How do you want to do it? And I go, do you want to have fun? She's like, yeah, Dad. I said, okay, here's what we do. We take my mugshot. We put it on a poster board. We said, will you go to the dance with me? If the answer is no, do you really want to make this guy mad?
Nice.
And she goes, yeah, I think that's...
she went for it,
Yeah,
huh?
she was like, yeah, I think that's good. And so then I don't have many of them, but I had a moment of clarity. And I was like, we should probably ask your mom. We should probably ask your mom.
Good co-parenting move.
So
right
we
there.
called her mom up and said, hey, this is what we're thinking. Yeah. She laughed and goes, yeah, probably not the best idea.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So Mom put the kibosh on it. Huh?
Yeah. So then I said, well, what does he like? And she goes, well, he likes wings. And I go, okay. So we got him a dozen wings and said, hey, the fall dance would be a wing ding if you'd go with me.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a good backup.
Yeah.
I like the mugshot idea though.
So here's the thing I'm toying with, man, because I was going to go as my mugshot for Halloween.
Were you?
Yeah. But I was thinking about it in the shower this morning, and I was like, I don't think that deserves to be funny.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I mean, I think that I can joke about it, and every once in a while in a text thread, my mugshot will be thrown out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think it deserves respect because
a little more of a, somber.
Yeah.
Because it is a low point or the low point of your life.
I don't want to turn it into a joke.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't a joke. It was the scariest thing that happened to me and that family. And it could have been real ugly. And it could have been a lot worse. And
well, it's sort of a miracle that it wasn't worse than it was. Yeah.
Amen. And so, but here we are again, just me and you talking. But those are the things that bounce around in my head. I want to see the best in everything. I want to see... I'm an eternal optimist. Mm-hmm. And you said it, and I believe it.
Yeah, that's your style.
I want to talk about that next. You're listening to Project Recovery.
It's the story of an American held in a dark Venezuelan prison.
Then all of a sudden, they all kind of lined up. They pointed their guns at me. And this is the point where I thought, I'm going to die today.
I'm Becky Bruce. I spent a year working on Hope in Darkness, which now has more than 2 million downloads. Find it on kslpodcast.com or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Dr. Matt, so I told you that I'm an eternal optimist. You actually told me that I'm an eternal optimist.
Yeah, we, one of the things that most psychologists do, but I've spent a lot of years studying our personality styles and traits. And, some people, we all have, most people have a mix of optimism and pessimism. but some people are a little bit farther out on that spectrum. And you're definitely what we'd call, primarily an optimistic person. Ever since I've ever known you, in fact, part of the fun of hanging around with you is when you're with an optimist, it's kind of contagious. You feel kind of light and uplifted and like things are going to be good. And so hanging with Casey is always fun. I think anybody would agree who knows you. You're an optimist.
And I like that about myself, and I like being able to bring joy to people. But one thing I've learned is for eternal optimists, 2020 has been a great fight.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, it's
really tested the boundaries of optimism.
So much, in fact, that people that I consider eternal optimists, friends of mine that I love and cherish and like to be around because they recharge my batteries and I can recharge their batteries, everybody is going through kind of a lull right now, and it's just a crazy time to be alive. And so much, in fact, that I saw on Facebook the other day, and it was a meme, and I won't do it justice, but it got me thinking. When you're on your phone and you see that thing that pops up and says, phone at 20%, you're like, okay, it's all right. I got 20%. Good chances are I'm going to make it throughout the day. You're on your phone, 10% pops up. You start to get a little anxious. You start to get a little worried. You start to do a little future tripping. You start to plan, where can I charge it? Where can I do this? If this goes out, I don't know what's going to go. I'm going to miss a call. A lot of anxiety happens for that.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think people right now in 2020, for the most part, are walking around on a 20% battery.
For themselves.
Right. And they don't know where to recharge it. And they're trying to figure out ways to recharge it. That was the meme.
There was a battery on one side and a dude on the other.
Yeah.
I think our buddy Rob Eastman sent that out.
Oh, was that it? Okay,
yeah.
So I saw that, and I was like, that's genius.
Yeah, it's a great meme. Yeah,
because I think people are walking on a 20% battery right now.
Kind of hoping they make it through the day.
Yeah, and whether it be the election or the pandemic, and right now everything in Utah right now, schools are closing, going on soft closures. Kids don't know where they're going next. They don't know.
It's so stressful. It's stressful for parents too. I talk to a lot of the people that I do therapy with are in school age, and I talk to their parents a lot, and parents are trying to juggle their own schedules to be able, some of them are working outside the home, some are working inside the home. I literally had a mom break down in tears. Her son, she and her son had a big old argument right there on, Zoom while I'm trying to do therapy with them. It was actually pretty interesting to be able to see into their home and see the dynamics. And he walked out of the room, and she was left there to talk to me for a few minutes and just broke down crying because she was talking about how difficult it is to have. She's a single parent, 3 kids at home. She's trying to work from home on a job that is pretty tough to work from home on, and always being interrupted by the kids with different changes in their schedules and connection issues for their schools, and just trying to get 3 kids to settle down and do their homework. Well, it's a lot that parents and families are going through with the school issue.
And everybody's talking about the new norm. The new norm sucks.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big fan of that term. I understand why we use it, but I don't want to give into it being a norm. I guess that's the optimist part of me.
Yeah, and the optimist me is we've got to find things that recharge our battery.
Right.
And whether it's a hike or it's going to the gym or diving into a good book or it's just making dinner with the family. I mean, I think we need to remind ourselves what's truly important. And to go back and talk about the DUI, that really was a turning point for me to focus on what's really important. Mm-hmm. It's not on how many likes. It's not on how many downloads. It's not whether I'm on TV or not. It's the connections that I have with my kids and my family. And it's honest, authentic connections.
And your friends.
And my friends.
Like me.
Yeah, my friends.
Yeah, okay.
But I think that's what I want to talk about now, is I want to talk about a little self-love and how important self-love really is. Because there's so many people out there like that mom you were talking about that's doing everything for her job, for her kids, for her community. And at the end of the day,
her needs are just in the back seat.
Yeah, at the end of the day, her battery's not on 10%. It may be on 3%.
Yeah.
And what happens when that goes to 0? It's not good. We're starting to see it everywhere right now. Mental health is up. Substance abuse is up. Suicide is up. All these things, it's a perfect storm for all of these.
Yeah. I'm glad we're talking about it today because I think a lot of people don't realize I think this analogy of the phone battery is going to be helpful to people because a lot of us don't realize that our battery's that low. We don't actually have something we can see like our phone shows us, and I think we just keep pushing on. There's a term that's that's out there now that people are talking about. It's not a new term, but it's called surge capacity. Mm-hmm. And the idea there is that as human beings, we have physical and emotional capacities to handle stressful moments, right? So a natural disaster happens, or an accident happens, and we can surge, emotionally. We kind of put a little extra energy out there, and mentally,
little adrenaline rush.
Sure, it's physical, it's also mental and emotional. Having that energy to kind of toughen up for these short little spikes in problems in our lives. But what happens when that spike continues to happen month after month with no real end in sight? In fact, I've said it before 2020 many times that you can handle almost any stressor if you know when it's going to end. Mm-hmm. It's not knowing when or if the stressor will end that really tears people down. It's a real mental quandary to be able to, can I keep going like this every day? And so at this point, 6-7 months into this pandemic and isolation that everybody's dealing with, all the stressors of school and work, and limiting your lives in the ways they have been, and so many financial problems for people. People are, psychiatrists and psychologists now are talking about people's capacity to surge is pretty much depleted.
I'll tell you what happens when you surge after surge after surge. You blow a circuit.
Yeah, you're worn out. You have nothing left.
Yeah,
and that's a real problem right now. This many months into the pandemic,
and that's why I'm not a doctor, but I think self-love is important to take those times, whether it's just a walk or a Calgon bath or
Calgon bath,
right?
Nice.
Take me away. I'm showing my age.
I'm going to go look for that. I wonder if they still sell it.
But an Epsom salt or a bath bomb,
no, exactly.
Whatever you need.
So I think it's a couple things though. I'm hearing what you're saying, and so self-love, or sometimes called self-care, people really do need to make time for that. The other part of it is adjusting expectations. And that's one that some people don't like to do because it kind of sounds like lowering the bar. But I think I've said it on this show before. Acceptance is a really, really important part of getting progress in your life. And my definition for acceptance is I'm not giving up or giving into something, but I'm understanding the true nature of it so that I can have healthy power and control. So if you can't accept that, your finances have changed, if you can't accept that your stress is up, if you can't accept that while you're trying to work on your computer, your kids are going to be goofing off in the other room and it's going to drive you crazy, if you can't accept that this is going to happen tomorrow and the next day and the next day, then every single day you set yourself up for a little mental and emotional crisis, a letdown, a disappointment, a frustration. So it does, I think part of it is taking inventory of your life, how the pandemic's affecting you, how it's affecting me, it's slightly different. So you look at your own life and say, okay, I have to accept that for the time being, since I don't know when it's going to end exactly, for the time being, this is how life is. And what has changed? It's actually good to sit and write it down. Well, one positive is I don't spend as much money eating out. Like, that was one of the things that Ashley and I used to like to do every single weekend, is we'd eat out once, twice a weekend. That gets pricey.
Yeah.
Well, saving money on that. But what are the negatives? What are the stressors? I finally gave in to setting up a little office in my room at my home instead of using the
kitchen
office.
table?
Well, I had an office on the main floor, but that's where people coming in and out of the door, and the dogs are there, and then my kids want to use that office for school. And so all these months I've been having these makeshift office space in other parts of the house, and I finally just decided, what am I doing? I'm just going to order a desk. I went and swiped my chair from the university. Don't tell them.
I won't.
Brought it over, and now I have a nice little spot. And I'm like, why didn't I just accept this months ago? I'd have been working in this nice little new office space. So acceptance is important, and then self-care on top of that. So what are you doing to recharge your batteries? What do you do?
Well, rednecks have the same kind of philosophy when it comes to self-acceptance.
Rednecks do?
Yeah, you hear this all the time. Is what it is. Yeah. That was very. And I always hate people who say, is what it is.
It is what it is.
But it is what it is. And so we've got to accept it and either accept it or change and do something different, because the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, accepting a different outcome.
Yeah. Acceptance allows you to stop looking at it the way you want to look at it or the way you think it should be, and allows you to look at the problem as it actually is. And then you can have some healthy power and control. You can engage in solutions that make sense for how things really are instead of how things should be.
So to get to your self-love or self-care, what am I doing to do that?
Yeah, what are you doing?
Well, I haven't changed much in the fact that I still go to the gym. And that's really where I kind of prioritize my day, get up in my head, do something aerobic and physical to get those endorphins going to let myself know I'm still alive. And then golf. I mean, it's very therapeutic to me. And I've gotten into it this year. I've golfed a little bit in the past, but my friend Barry and I have been going every Friday. And then last weekend I went twice because I went with my son Spencer. And I love it. I love getting outside, especially with the new norm, being inside as much. I work in an office anyway, but I didn't realize how much I missed, those opportunities, just get in your car and drive somewhere, go to lunch with somebody, do those kinds of things. Instead, you're just in the house. And so it's, what's that quote by Jack Nicklaus? Golfing isn't about winning or losing. It's about taking a walk with your best friends in the nicest park in the neighborhood. And since I'm terrible at golf, that's the way I have to look at it, is I'm just there to get out. And I mean, Utah has such beautiful golf courses with the deer on the golf course. I hit one in the ear, by the way. Yeah. I didn't mean to. It was an accident. Yeah, I don't think that.
Yeah, if I tried to, I wouldn't have been able to. But he was okay, just his ear.
I've got a saying about golf. It's not as eloquent as Jack Nicklaus.
Yeah.
Golf is like sex and pizza. Even when it's bad, it's still pretty good.
Still pretty good.
Yeah,
I think let's hang that up here in the studio. I like that.
I don't even know if it's gonna make the cut, but it makes me laugh every single time.
That's funny.
And I bet you money, there's not a day that I'm on the golf course that I don't bust that joke out sometime. And I get a chuckle out of it. And I go,
pretty good.
I'm done. I'm out of here.
That's Casey's style. But
I guess
what else are you doing though? Like so those are physical activities. I think for the listeners, it's good to realize, okay, exercising, very, very vital, especially during this pandemic. So getting out and walking at the very least is really important, or going to a gym or whatever you do. And then, golf, that's another physical outlet. What are you doing,
spiritually?
Otherwise, yeah.
I'm working on the connections with my kids. I've got 3 kids at 3 different schools. And so since I'm no longer on morning TV, and I've got a valid driver's license.
Right.
I'm taking the kids to school when it's my days.
Great time, isn't it? Just those few minutes in the car.
And I noticed today, and this was just today, I had 3 different conversations with my kids and realized that they're 3 different personalities, but they all have bits of me in them. So my oldest one is more about, hey, what's going on? What are you thinking? And I asked her today, I said, hey, so... I said, what are you doing? And you're going to love this, Dr. Matt. She goes, well, she is my kid. She goes, I'm reading The Alchemist.
Yeah.
And I go, I've heard of The Alchemist. And she goes, yeah, Will Smith said it's a great book. And I go, well, is it a good book? And she goes, well, I'm a little behind, but so far it's pretty good. It's about a boy who chases his dreams. And I said, well, what's your dreams? She goes, I don't know. And I go, you think that's weird? I mean, you're 15. Mm-hmm. Do you know and you don't want to tell me, or have you really not thought about it? And she goes, I don't know. I don't guess I've never really thought about it. So I gave her some homework.
There you go. I like it. That's perfect.
Think about it. And then the next time I'm driving her to school, I go, hey, I was wondering if you thought about your dream.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I will say this. It's not that unusual for a 15-year-old to not really have, or you have weird dreams like you think you're going to be a space cowboy or something like that,
I was just happy to say she wasn't going to be a Kardashian.
Yeah.
I was like, cool.
Right. Yeah.
Winning.
As long as she's not, that's not her goal. But I think that's a great dad intervention right there, to just give her an opportunity to say, yeah, that's cool. Think about it, and then you got to make sure you follow up. Yeah.
So then I get Frankie in the car and we're driving to junior high. We're just pulling around the corner. All of a sudden, she screams at the top of her lungs. And I'm like, whoa! And she goes, tension breaker. Had to be done. And we laughed for 2 minutes until I dropped her off.
That's funny.
And then she got out of the car and the doors open. And I said, did you fart? And she goes, Dad, stop it. Because now she's in junior high.
Right.
And
right,
she's starting to become a young lady, you know.
Yeah.
And that was cool.
That's awesome.
And I drive in Bowden to school, and I drop him off, and, you know, he's all about Fortnite. And,
okay.
And we're just talking about Fortnite. And I guess I messed up. I got him a purge mask for Halloween.
Oh.
I didn't really realize it was a purge mask, but it was.
The movie The Purge, is that what you're talking about? Okay.
You know, and I had to answer that phone call from my ex-wife. I was like, hey, did you really buy our 8-year-old son a purge mask for Halloween? I was like, yeah, I guess I did. Sorry.
Well, okay. I mean, I don't know.
Sure. But for me, that's a fun interaction.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
way
Because
fun.
he thinks it's cool. His stepbrothers thinks it's cool.
Yeah.
And he had that show. He was like, I was at home and it wasn't my night. He comes bouncing in the door. He's like, hey, Dad, I got to get my mask. I go, why? He goes, my stepbrothers want to see it. And so it was like a cool, yeah, he got a cool one. So
she let him keep it.
Yeah. So I guess I'm just making honest connections and genuine connections with people.
I think that's been
where we're not talking about things that are going on, just like, how are you?
Yeah, I think that's before the purge, before the pandemic. I think we did a lot of phoning in our parenting and our relationships, checking the boxes like we've talked about before, doing the right things, the good things, but maybe not really slowing down and making the connections. And now that people are home together with their kids more, that can go one of two ways. But hopefully it goes the right way if you put the effort in, like a parent. If you sit down and talk to them, have meals together. I just ordered another meditation cushion so I can do some one-on-one meditations with my kids. And, you know, the car rides together, going for walks. You see families out walking more than you used to,
Yeah.
I think, before all of this. So you can, if you accept that this is how things are for now, if you like to call it the new norm, that's fine. Dr. Matt's still holding on to the fact that we're not going to this, yeah, but that's just semantics.
I'm with you.
But you can then have some power and control over it and do things that are truly good for yourself, self-care, self-love. I think changing a little bit of your expectations about how much you can accomplish and get done, you know, be realistic with yourself instead of setting yourself up with expectations that may not fit the conditions right now. And that depends on your employment and all those sorts of things. But be realistic with yourself. That's part of self-care. And then honestly, doing some things like reading a book or listening to an audio tape or doing those kinds of things that you maybe didn't take time for, just for yourself. If there's something you've, I know a couple people who've always wanted to learn to play an instrument, so they ordered the instrument and they've been working through YouTube lessons to learn to play guitar or whatever it is. And it's like, yeah, take time to develop yourself so that you have more capacity to give to others. Because back to our low battery analogy, and I had this conversation with somebody earlier this week, where it's not selfish to take care of yourself. In fact, the more you take care of yourself mentally, emotionally, physically, the more you have to give to others, the important others in your life, your children, your family, your friends, people you work with. You have to pause and take care of yourself. Otherwise, you run out and you're the one that needs all the care from other people because you don't have enough to give. And so many people don't stop and ask themselves, what am I doing to charge my battery up? What am I doing? Is my spiritual battery low? Is my emotional and physical battery low? What is it? And then spend some real specific time, charging yourself back up.
Now, I love it. And remember what my friend says.
What's that?
Is what it is.
You do that surprisingly well, Casey.
I'm an actor.
Yeah, that's true.
Hey, thank you for stopping by Project Recovery today. And don't forget, it's brought to you by our friends at useonlyasdirected.org. 3-part solution for the opioid epidemic. Speak out, opt out, and of course, throw out. Project Recovery is a KSL podcast.
The contents of this program are for informational purposes only. The program is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician, licensed therapist, or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you've heard on this program. KSL does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, physicians, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned on the program. Reliance on any information provided on the program is solely at your own risk.
It's the story of an American held in a dark Venezuelan prison.
Then all of a sudden they all kind of lined up. They pointed their guns at me. And this is the point where I thought, I'm going to die today.
I'm Becky Bruce. I spent a year working on Hope in Darkness, which now has more than 2 million downloads. Find it on kslpodcast.com or wherever you listen to podcasts.